All right, so we'll begin our geeky chat, but I wanted to welcome everyone to our very first Body-Geek Book Club, and I'm really excited because this is our very first video chat as a community, and we actually get to speak with the author of the book we're reading this month. So I'm here with Bernie Clark, who's live from Vancouver, right? Vancouver, Canada.
Yes.
And we have so many members in our book club right now. We have 50 members who are all across the globe, actually, from Europe, Canada, North America, Asia. And the purpose of this book club is to really bring a sense of community. I've met several teachers who have really wanted to start reading, but felt like it was very difficult with their busy schedule. So this is a great way to feel encouraged to pick up a book and read as little or as much as we can to get different insights on yoga. And that can mean many things, whether it's a spiritual side or learning the anatomy side or learning both. So I'd like to start off the chat with the nice short and sweet grounding meditation. Because I know everyone could be in a lot of different places right now to get to this call or to this recording. So if you'd like to meditate with us, feel free to take a comfortable seat and find a nice and quiet place. You can close your eyes. And just get settled in. You could be coming straight from work. You could be coming from a really long and busy day. So take this opportunity to get reconnected with yourself, with your mind body. And observe your breath without trying to change it or fix it. But just simply observing the natural pattern of your breath at this moment. Notice where your breath is currently centered. Is it in your chest? Or is it traveling towards your abdomen? Or somewhere in between? Notice the weight of your head. How is it placed on top of your shoulders? Notice the sensation of your shoulders themselves. And notice if there are any parts of your body that could relax a little more. And do you notice any parts of your body that still have some microcontraction? If so, see if you can soften that area just a little more. And as we wrap up this meditation, I invite you to think of what you would like to gain from this wonderful chat we're about to have. Any intentions you'd like to set for yourself, your students, people in your community. And from here, you can place your hands to your heart and bow your head towards your fingertips. And you can blink your eyes open and relax your hands. So again, thank you everyone for joining this chat or watching the recording of our Body-Geek Book Club. And I'm very excited to be here with Bernie Clark, who is the author of Your Spine, Your Yoga, which is a book that most of you voted on to begin reading as a community. And I'd like to introduce Bernie. For those of you that may have not heard of him yet, Bernie is the author of many other books, including The Complete Guide to Yin Yoga. He wrote Your Body, Your Yoga, which is the precursor to Your Spine, Your Yoga. And I like this part of the bio. Bernie is actually has a background in tech and space. He's been, let me make sure I get this right. He spent over 25 years as a senior executive in the high-tech and space industry. And then spent over 4 decades investigating the path of meditation, teaching yoga, meditation. These are the other books that Bernie has written, from the Gita to the Grail, exploring yoga stories and Western myths, yin sites. So he's also the creator of the yinyoga.com website, which I have been exploring for the past several years. So this is also why I've been very excited to get to sit here and chat with Bernie. I've been following your yin yoga work for many years now, and it's shaped the way that I've been teaching. So thank you so much, Bernie, for taking your time to be here with us.
Well, thanks for the invitation. This should be fun.
So we have, oh, hi, Talita. Wanted to say wave to other folks in the chat here.
Hi.
Hi. Talita, where are you joining in from?
Connecticut, U.S.
Awesome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Awesome. And then we also have Tara. Tara, where in the East Coast are you joining in from?
Northwestern Pennsylvania.
Northwestern Pennsylvania. Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and mute everyone except for Bernie and me. Let's see here. Unmute. Okay. Great. Okay. So Bernie, we might have some questions about the things we're learning as we're reading, and it would be nice to get an insight on what inspired you to write this trilogy.
Well, Paul Grilly, not what, who. Paul has been a mentor, a friend, a teacher of mine for a long time now, almost 15 years, I think, when I first met him. And before I met him, before I got into yin yoga, which Sarah Powers introduced me to, and then through her I met Paul Grilly. I was a very yang, type A type of yogi. I was in Ashtanga, and I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And when I discovered Yin, something inside me just kind of clicked and said I needed to balance my yang energies with more of this. I was already doing meditation, but Yin in your yoga made such a difference in my practice. And through Sarah, I met Paul, and I started to understand a lot of his other concepts, such as the fact that we're all unique, that everyone's different, not just on the outside, which we can tell just by looking, but also on the inside. The shape of our bones is different. And so I studied with Paul many times, and I've been to his place and visited him and his lovely wife, Susie. And I kept telling him, you should write a book about this, Paul. I know you got your DVD out there. He's got a 4-hour DVD, which everybody should have. But I wanted the real detail of it. So I kept bugging him for years to write the book. And he said, nah, you write it. And so eventually I did with his urging. And because he wasn't going to write it, I sat down to write the book. But once I did that, it was like opening up a whole world. I had to not just look at some bones, I had to look at all of them. And it's not just the bones that are different. Our fascia is different. Our muscles are different. Everything about us is different. Our immune system also affects how flexible we are. And that's different. Our nervous system is also different. And so I wanted to document these different ways that we can or may not be able to do our yoga practice based on, I like to say, your unique biology and biography.
So what would you say was the turning point that had you realize, wow, everyone's bodies are so different?
Well, I guess when I myself was trying to do some poses that I just couldn't seem to do, like lotus pose. When I was first starting first started yoga back in the late 90s, the physical practice of yoga, I decided I was going to master lotus pose. So I forced my legs into here, and then I started feeling this burning in my knees, but no pain, no gain. So I ignored that for about a minute or so. And when I came out, the burning didn't stop. I had ruptured both meniscus. And eventually, years later, I had to get arthroscopic surgery to repair that. So why couldn't I do that pose? Other people could do it so easily. And then when I met Paul and realized that it depends on the shape of your pelvis, the shape of your femur, the laxness in your ligaments in the knees, and so many other things affect whether I could ever do these poses or not. And understanding his concepts of tension and compression, which is the ultimate limit to how far you can go in a pose, combined with human variation, how our bones are all different, then I started to wake up and saying, I'm never going to be able to do a drop back to wheel and catch my ankles. I just don't have the body for it. So I stopped trying. It was okay not to do those poses.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up the book itself here. And for those of you that haven't picked up the book yet, this is the Kindle version, which been able to highlight so many of these golden nuggets throughout the book. I know that you had a chart that showed the range of basically a possibility of answers to the question, what stops me?
Right.
Like, what stops me from actually going deeper into the posture, right?
Right.
And a question I had about that was that I know that you said that it would take experience and wisdom and knowledge to be able to answer that question of what stops someone in a posture. Because there are many yogis out there that would like to keep pushing until either they get injured or they're able to go deeper or something in between. Mm-hmm. Would you say that injury would be mostly avoidable, or that it is possibly something that just teaches us about our bodies?
I don't quite follow that. The saying we have in the West, no pain, no gain. I don't agree with that. Pain is a signal from the body that something's wrong. The body's trying to give you a warning that you're going too far, you're going to hurt something. Now, there may be cases in therapy where you've got a frozen shoulder, you've got scar tissue in there because you had an operation and it's been immobilized for weeks. And now to regain mobility there with a physical therapist, you may have to go through pain. But in a normal yoga setting, if you're just trying to get your foot behind your head and you can't get there and you're feeling pain, that pain is telling you stop trying to put your foot behind your head. It doesn't belong there. There's no health value to being able to put your foot back here. You don't need it in any part of life except in a yoga room. So pain is, I think, an important discriminator, but we're not trained to pay attention to pain. We're trained to ignore it. We're trained to take a pill, mask it. It's kind of analogous when I had my first car. It was a 1958 Volkswagen, and it had this red engine light that would come on. And I hated seeing that light because it meant there's a whole bunch of expensive repairs coming up. So I just put masking tape over it. And so I wouldn't see the light anymore, and I felt good until the car broke down on the highway and caused a whole bunch of problems. But that's what a lot of our Western attitude to pain is. Let's just mask it, let's just hide it. And so we keep hurting ourselves until there's a catastrophe, and then we can't do something. So pain is an important thing to pay attention to. But what's pain? Everybody's different. They have different thresholds to it. Is it just discomfort? So again, you're all unique. Everyone's unique. Nobody has your biography. Nobody has your biology. So what's painful for you may not be the same as what's painful to somebody else. And this is where wisdom and experience comes in. If you ignore it and you really damage yourself, next time when you feel those sensations, hopefully you'll know, well, you know, last time I didn't pay attention. This time I'm going to be smarter. I'm not going to go there. So yeah, and you're right, there's many things that stop us. I call it the what stops me spectrum. It could be that our muscles are short and tight, but that's rarely the answer. It could be our fascia is contracted. It could be our ligaments are shortened. It could be our immune system is overactivated, and you get tight when your immune system gets overactivated. It could be the nervous system. You've got too many muscle fibers firing at once. It could be you're hitting yourself. You know, why can't I get my wrist to my shoulder? Well, because my body's hitting my body. I just can't get there. So there's a whole spectrum of answers. And if you ignore all that and you just keep trying to go further and further and further, at some point, you're just going to hurt yourself. How do you know you've reached your limit? How do you know when it's okay to go further? You have to pay attention. What are you feeling?
So this leads me to my next question. And actually, I'm going to unmute everyone because I have a feeling some of our attendees would love to be able to ask questions and interact as well. Unmute everybody. And we have Samantha just joined in, waving hello. So you're all unmuted, and if throughout the conversation you would like to ask Bernie a question, please feel free, because this is meant to be a really nice community dialogue. But real quick, I'll ask my question, which is, it deals with the experience of seeing younger students, say within the ranges of 20-ish to 30-ish years old, who tend to go really hard at the postures. I remember teaching to many groups of people, and it tended to be that age range where, you know, if I did not cue a chaturanga, they would squeeze one right into the sequence. Yes. And it does make me wonder if age is a part of it, where, you know, there's a certain phase of life where we'd like to get that young energy out. And it also makes me wonder if the content in this book, if you're able to reach that age range, or the, you know, the types of people that just, they're youngsters.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's particularly age, because when I took up asana practice, I was in my 40s, and I was still type A, going. At some point, age makes it so you can't do the things that you used to be able to do. So yeah, when you're 20 or 25, 30, you can do more, and maybe you're more likely to hurt yourself because you can do more. But I think it's more of a personality type. The type A people who always want to go further. At some point, you have to ask yourself why. And there's always another pose. There's always further to go. So what's your intention? And a big thing that I got from Sarah Powers is, what's your intention in doing the practice? Why are you doing it? Is it just aesthetics? Is it just to look good? Is it to master the next series? Because there's always another series. Or is it to become healthier? And if it's to become healthier, you don't need more poses. You just need to keep some degree of mobility, some degree of strength, some degree of endurance, and then you've got the 3 components of physical health. So, you know, again, you don't need to put your feet behind your head for that. So I think there's a bit of both. There's age, but also personality type.
Gotcha. Yeah, I do remember speaking with some other teachers who used to have that intense yang energy, and we started realizing that we were taking our energy and our mannerisms and our outlook on life and applying it directly onto the mat, which made for a very aggressive practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's for the youngsters. There's 20-year-old youngsters who they aren't like that. And there are some people I know, they just love to get up at the crack of noon, start the day with a scone or two, take a little nap at 2 o'clock, then go do a 4-hour yin yoga class, and they're in bed by 8 p.m. You can do that at 20 as well, but these people are not going to come to an Ashtanga flow class. They need more yang in life. So you get youngsters, you get youngsters. It's just the youngsters need to know that they got to balance that yang energy with a more yin approach. Because if you don't seek that balance, Mother Nature will tend to impose it on you. Sickness or an accident or something will slow you down.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how many fellow teachers got injured, and that was a wake-up call to reevaluate the way that we've all been approaching the practice. On this note, I'm going to pull up a question that we have from someone in Europe who couldn't make it. If any of you would like to ask Bernie a question right now, please feel free.
I have a question.
Okay, Tara,
Yep,
you're
go
on too. Go ahead, Tara.
Who's first? Okay. My question is perhaps just asking for some advice on incorporating all that I've learned through your books on the individuality of the students that I'm teaching, and knowing how to deliver a class with that knowledge. I'll give you an example. To set up a posture, it would be a setup and a line, a refine and a release type of situation. And I find that I'm going into that refining stage, and here's the anatomy difficulties, right? Whether we're trying to find that proper alignment, or if I'm trying to make sure that everyone is in their individual body. I guess I'm stumbling over my words, but the question is whether to come at it from more of a structured approach and then offer the individuality piece to it, or approach the class from the individual perspective and then try to see my students in the areas that I could potentially help them. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Do you have advice on?
It's a question that does come up quite often because everyone is so unique. It's the analogy I draw is, imagine you went to a doctor, and in the doctor's office there was a waiting room with 19 other patients waiting for the doctor. And the doctor came in and said, today we're all doing aspirin. Aspirin, 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 aspirin. And for you, aspirin just hurts your stomach, maybe you've got an ulcer or something. And someone else is 6 months pregnant thinking, well, is aspirin going to help my baby? You wouldn't go back to that doctor. You want the doctor to know you and figure out what the intention is of your visit. But now you go to a yoga studio and you come in and there's 19 other students in the class, and the teacher comes in and says, today we're all doing sun salutations. And you might think, great, I've been doing yin yoga all week, I need this. Somebody else might think, I've got bad wrist, that's gonna hurt my hands. And somebody else is 6 months pregnant. And well, should I be doing up dog and down dog? And so ideally, you'd like to have 20 different classes with each individual, but that's not practical.
Right.
And so instead you have to realize, well, you do have 20 different people there. You have an intention as the teacher. Like suppose you're putting them into down dog. Why would you put them into down dog? There's lots of answers to that, but let's suppose it's a warm up because you're gonna work upper body more and you wanna wake up the muscles there. So it's an upper body workout. Now, do you have to have every down dog, every dog look the same? Does the St. Bernard have to look like a Chihuahua? No. If your intention in down dog is just to wake up the upper body muscles, then you can actually have a longer dog, which is more upper body strength. But maybe your intention is to start to loosen up the hamstring, so maybe you have a shorter dog. I mean, Uttanasana, micro dog I call it, is the shortest down dog. It's all back body stretch. Plank pose is the longest dog. It's all upper body strength, no lower body length. So where's the perfect down dog? I don't know. But you can have them play with it. Now, where should their feet be? You can have them play with it. Feet wide, feet together, toes out, feet parallel. I don't know where their feet should be, so we have a little game of it. Let's come to down dog. Let's try the first down dog with feet parallel. How does that feel? Next time, down dog, feet as wide as the mat, maybe turned in a bit. Third time, let's have the feet together with the toes pointing out. Now we've done 3 different down dogs. Which ones felt best for you? How'd your lower back feel? Next time you can have the hands. Where should the hands be? I don't know. Let's figure it out for you. Should fingers be out? People with wrist issues, they like that. Hands shoulder width apart, wider, narrower. So this way, you're still getting your intention met, but you're not insisting that everybody has to look the same. Because as I like to say, every dog will have its day. And one dog will look different than another, but they may still be getting the intention of your pose that way.
That's helpful, thank you.
Give them the options to play and find their alignment. Alignment is important, but there are no universal alignments. You have to help them discover what their alignment is like.
And how do you translate that into a class with like you've had the same students for a long period of time? Would you still suggest each class going through those 3 different variations of down dog? Do you find that individual alignment changes on a class per class basis? Or would you suggest, we've played with this several times, and if you know what alignment feels best in your body, that's where you go. If you're new to this particular asana, then let's go through this
exploration.
You know what I mean? Yes.
Yeah, a bit of both. I would often ask if it's a busy class, how many people are here for the first time? And if even one person's hand came up, then I go through that whole exploration. But I'd always tell the people, if you already know where your down dog is, just go to it. If you already know where your wheel is or your warrior is, just go to that. But if you're not sure or you want to revisit it, let's go through this whole exploration and we'll try it again. So I usually break the class into 3 groups. It'd be nice if I could break it into 20 groups, but that's not practical. So I'll say for someone who's never been here before or someone who doesn't have a lot of natural flexibility, let's follow the track 1 options. For the people who are naturally very flexible and know all this, you can do track 3. Track 2 is somewhere in between. So I'll say, let's do the track 1. Track 3, if you know the pose, just go into it. So I don't have to worry about them. They've done it 100 times. And now I'll focus on the track 1 students.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think Samantha had a question as well.
Yeah, can you hear me all right? I don't have my headphones.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And sorry if you covered this earlier. I was teaching, so I just came when I could.
Good excuse.
I was just curious about, I guess, how you, on the back of what we've just talked about, of how you introduce to students who might be more flexible and might be on the hyper-mobile, hyper-flexible realm, but we want them to have an intention and feel a bit more strength. And especially if they're an experienced practitioner, they're used to just going like bang on as hard as they can with everything. What's your approach to getting them to stop for a second, think about maybe breaking this down? Like, so I do this a lot with tree, and I bring the knee up using hip flexors, take it open as wide as you can, even if it's not totally to the side. Pull the heel towards your thigh and then plant the foot wherever your muscles are holding you. And without fail, the more experienced people are always just hiking their foot as high as they can, not using the muscles, trying to get away from the attention. So how do you find, just to try and get the experienced and maybe more flexible people to maybe reevaluate their practice after having done it for so long?
Right. You've probably heard in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra the story of Abhyasa and Vairagam, the 2 ways we're supposed to practice yoga. Well, I think a more modern version of that would be attention and intention. I'm not translating those, but those are the 2 key words in my practice.
Yeah.
What's your intention in doing yoga? Why are you here? What's the intention in doing this pose? What are you trying to accomplish? Now, these people who are very flexible, they don't need more mobility. They already have that. So why are they coming here? If it's for performance, that may be a valid intention. If you're a dancer, a gymnast, an athlete, you might need to look really amazing because it's a very competitive world out there. But most people, they're not trying to, work on the Cirque du Soleil. They just want to be healthy, want to be able to live their life, do their sport, pick up their kids, function in daily life. And for that, you don't need a huge range of motion, but you do need stability. And in my second book, Your Spine, Your Yoga, the spine is designed for stability first, mobility second. So for a lot of these very mobile people, I would have to ask them, what's your intention being here? Do you really need to become more mobile, or should we back that off and now let's work on stability? Because studies have shown couch potatoes never hurt their back. It's flexible people who hurt their back because they can go really far. They can do a drop back to wheel. The spine's not really meant to do drop back to wheels. There's no functional benefit of that. But because you got the flexibility to do it, you do it. But the spine is meant to transfer loads from the upper body to the lower body and vice versa. In order to do that, you need to stiffen the core. So if their intention is to become healthier, stronger, optimal, then let's back off the huge range of motion. Let's start working at more stability. So it's intention first and foremost, and then you pay attention. Are you getting the sensations that we want? Are you working to get stronger? Or are you just kind of flopping back because that's what your body can do? So have an intention, then pay attention, and depending on what you're feeling, you modify, so you keep circling around. Now that puts the onus on the students. That means the student really has to do the work instead of just following what the teacher's saying. Because now the student has to come inside with interoception and figure out, well, what am I feeling? What is this? Instead of just going until grab my feet, no, what's actually going on inside me? And I think that's a great gift for you to give your students, the ability to sense what's going on in their own life.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point of a lot of experienced people have really great proprioception. They've developed that body awareness, but they still may not have interoception.
Right.
Yes, that's
so
a good point.
A great question to ask your student is, what are you feeling? And most of the time they'll just look blank and say, fine. But that's not the question. I didn't ask how are you feeling, what are you feeling? And they won't know. So you might have to start by guiding them. Well, we're doing warrior. I want to strengthen the legs. Do you feel your quads? Are they working? Are they contracted? What about your hamstrings? Are they soft, or can you track those too? So you start to give them clues as to what they should be experiencing. And eventually they'll start to notice it from themselves. But at first, they may need some guidance.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Sure.
I find that a really nice approach, contrasting with my experience in yoga teacher training, where we would get really bad critiques from the yoga teacher trainers if we were not directly telling the students exactly what to do, where to place the feet, what angle, what lines. And even back then, I think that was over 10 years ago, I remember I was asking students in our community classes, asking them how they felt, like, what would happen if you did this, or what would happen if you shifted your hands this way? And I got such bad critiques on it, but it's really nice to know, like, this is a really great way to encourage interoception, is to ask the questions and to give the power back to the students to decide, to choose in that moment, at every moment as they're practicing.
Those standardized alignment cues are great for mass producing hundreds of teachers out of the same program, because it's easy to judge. Is the foot pointing straight there? Is the knee over the ankle? Is the knee pointing over the second toe? Not the third toe, it's gonna be over the second toe. That's easy to cookie cutter everyone. Unfortunately, because everybody's different, not everyone can do aspirin. It's gonna hurt some people. And some people, they have a huge torsion to their tibia, which means their feet should be pointing out. And that's neutral for them. And to make the foot point forward, they had to internally rotate the hip. And that's gonna cause all sorts of other problems with the flexion of the hip. So alignment's important, but what's their alignment? That's much harder to teach. And so these 200-hour teacher trainings, which just kind of cookie cutter on the alignment cues, think of them like grade 1, 2, or 3. You're learning some basics, reading, writing, arithmetic. But now you're going to high school, and you're expected to modify that now. You can now start reading Spanish and French and other things. And you learn about language and grammar, and now you can start to create your own stories with these basic building blocks. But you're not stuck in grade 1, 2, or 3 when you're in high school, and then eventually you go to university. And that's 2,000-hour teacher training programs, which are coming, I guess.
Yeah, that's the next level. But that kind of leads me to my next question. I've actually been learning about Dr. Stuart McGill lately. I'm not sure if it was Samantha or someone else in our Facebook group that mentioned some of his books, and then a couple weeks later we came out with the Body-Geek Book Club, and then I found that he wrote your foreword, so it was really nice connection there. So I would love to know how that came about.
Well, I'd heard of Stu for a long time, and I'd read his books too. And again, I resolved to meet him. So I went to one of his courses. It was actually just a weekend thing that he was doing here in Vancouver. I met him there, and he's very kind and patient. And throughout the years, he'd let me Skype back and forth, and I would go over some of these things that are puzzling me, and especially on the spine, where he's such an expert. And yeah, he's just been very, very generous with his time, and he's a very open, fun guy. So, and he's brilliant with the work he's done through his whole body of work over his life is amazing.
Yeah, I saw a video that he had made, I believe it was over 20 years ago, when he was much younger, and he was speaking about the spine, and I just thought that is so amazing to know at that age that this is what interests you and this is what you're passionate about, and then to continue that work and then to be able to help so many more people with that.
Well, to show how small a world it is, when I first met Stu and I told him I was a yoga teacher, he mentioned that he's not really into yoga, doesn't know too many yoga, but the one yoga teacher that he really respected and admired was this guy named Paul Grilly, because he talks about the variation of the bones. And Stu actually used some of Paul Grilly's bone photos in his presentations. And so the whole circle had kind of closed when I told him that, oh, Paul's a good friend of mine. And, he was very grateful that Paul gave him the permission to use these bone photos in Stu's own presentations.
Oh, that's so awesome. Are the three of you're all in Canada?
No, Stu's in Canada, but Paul's in not too far from you. He's in California, just below San Francisco there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm going to read a question for you, Bernie. This is from Julie Pons. She said she's from Europe, so she's sleeping right now. But she gave a really detailed question. Let's see here. Here's my question for Bernie. I study with a very well-known teacher at the moment, and she refutes that we should do a retroversion of the pelvis in Backbends. This is quite new to me, as I studied anatomy for 3 years with French expert Blandine Calais-Germain, and learned that we should protect the lumbar spine by slightly going into retroversion before arching the spine back. The teacher claims it is to avoid compression of the kidneys and to teach people to do an anteversion in Backbends. What is your idea on this?
I've certainly heard of that author. Calais-Germain is an amazing author, and she acknowledges human variation in her books as well, which is quite fascinating. She comes from a dance world, but her writings are applicable throughout all therapeutic modalities. I assume what Julie means by retroversion is a kind of a pelvic tuck, kind of a posterior tilt, as opposed to an anterior tilt. And as I describe in my book, Your Spine, Your Yoga, that may be good for some people, but not good for other people. It depends on so many factors. I don't think you can say never do a retroversion or always do a retroversion. Rather, I would say do one and see how it feels for your body. Because for some people, no matter what you say as a standard for everybody else, for them, it's just not going to feel right. But maybe for 90% of the people, it does feel good. So again, I would never be dogmatic, and I would say you must always do this before doing that pose. Instead, I would say, let's experiment. Let's explore. How does it feel when you do a pelvic tuck and then do a back bend? Now let's try it with an anterior tilt. How does that feel when you do your back bend? Now again, most people, they won't know how it feels. They're not used to paying attention. So you have to say, well, feel the sacrum. Do you feel any tension in there? Is it painful tension? Is it good tension? How about in the lumbar? How about in the stomach? How about in the kidneys? And there's nothing the matter with compressing kidneys. Like any tissue, you need to compress it, you need to stretch it, you need to exercise all tissues. But if you do too much of it or too often, then it could be bad. So just the fact that a back bend compresses the kidneys, yeah, back bends compress kidneys. Most people aren't bothered by that. There may be a few people that are bothered by that, but that doesn't mean the other 99% of the population should never do it. So rather than, I can't think of an a priori anatomical reason why you should or shouldn't do it. And even if I could, it wouldn't matter. What's it feel like for you? What's your experience when you do it? So again, this is where human variation is so important. What are you feeling in that pose?
Oh, thank you for answering that question. I think she'll look forward to being able to watch this in the recording.
See, I think a lot of times the alignment cues that we had and that were offered in your 200-hour teacher training is because some teacher was doing a pose, like maybe a warrior, and did some explorations and found when I line up my knee or the second toe and I turn the back foot in 45 degrees and I relax my shoulders back and down and reach out through the fingertips, I feel really grounded and solid. So that's what I'm going to teach all my students. Not realizing that she's different. Her students aren't like her. And all that worked really well for her. To now say everyone must look exactly like me, that's the fallacy that we're all the same, but we're not. Rather, it's better to have that whole process she went through to find her warrior being done for the students. Okay, let's now find your own warrior. And we'll have all the students go through this. Should the arms be up, down, palms up, palms down? I don't know. Let's try it and see. Where should the knee be? Forward, backwards? I don't know. So with all these things, you can't decide ahead of time, this is going to be bad for you. It's something that you'll have to get the student to figure out.
It's almost like saying that there is no bad cue. It's just, it could be bad for someone, but really it's more about what cue is going to work for you, or what cue.
Yeah, I wouldn't quite go that far. Like often when I run my yin yoga teacher trainings, one of the things people come with is there's a one right way to teach yin yoga. And I have to tell them there's no one right way to do anything. There are a lot of wrong ways to do it, but there's no one right way to do it. So there are definitely wrong ways to do yoga poses. And those are the ones usually where you cause pain. Now that pain may be while you're in the pose, or maybe when you come out of the pose, or maybe the next day or two. Sometimes it takes a little while, especially for nerve damage to show up. But there are definitely wrong ways to do things, but there's no one right way. So the challenge is to find out what the right way is for you. And it's not going to be the same as the right way for somebody else. But there are definitely wrong ways to do it. And usually the body will tell you by giving you warning signals, little tweaks. And if you ignore those little tweaks, they become big tweaks. And then they become pain, and then they become operations. And you can't go to yoga anymore, and yoga studios go out of business, and teachers are laid off. So it's bad for the economy to ignore these little tweaks.
Yeah. And honestly, having this dialogue with you is really, it's teaching me as we speak, because it has me realize the power of words and word choices. And as someone my English is not my first language, and I'm learning all the time that what you say really matters to everyone. But when it's a teaching setting, it can really empower a student or lead a student down a different direction.
Right.
So, yeah, thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah. Tara has a question.
Yes. You're still muted, Tara.
I'll unmute her.
She may have muted herself.
How's that?
You're good.
Yeah. Okay. My question is, in your study of the spine and in writing this book, and as you mentioned when we began this call, the importance of the stability of the spine, more so than the flexibility of the spine. With that knowledge and your experience, have you found that in your teaching there are asana in the physical practice that you just don't even find are necessary? Does it limit how you teach? Are there, I guess, I see more and more students coming into my classes with spine issues. And so I'm wondering, the perspective of that information, how has it changed, I guess, what you're offering in your classes?
Yeah, it has changed a lot. I wouldn't call it limiting. because that sounds a little bit negative, but rather it's helped me simplify my practice. You know, when I was going through my Ashtanga and Vinyasa phases, I was collecting asanas like crazy. Like I wanted to get up to 1,000 asanas in different postures. And then I had to stop and ask, well, what's the intention of these poses? Is it just to look good, is it aesthetics, or is it to actually accomplish something? And once I realized, you know, my intention is just to be healthy, to optimize my health, and as I get older, to maintain my health. You don't need a lot of poses for that. In yin yoga, we only have a couple of dozen poses, and that's it. But even in the yang world, I've trimmed it down to kind of the core essentials. And along the way, I threw out a lot that I call high-risk, low-reward poses, like headstand. The neck is not designed to support the whole body weight. It's designed for mobility. Half of our range of motion in the spine is here in the neck, in the head. And it's designed to turn around and look, and you know, when you're backing up your car, you should be able to turn and look behind you. It's not designed to carry the whole body weight. Now, there are some people that can do headstands no problem, but they're usually smaller people. They're only carrying maybe 110 pounds of them. But you know, a 6'2" linebacker that's 250 pounds, that guy should not be doing headstand. There's just no reward for it. Just having the legs up the wall will give him the benefits that he needs to get from it. So just understanding what the intention is in these different regions of the spine allowed me to get rid of a whole bunch of things. Deep back bends, deep twists. Again, there's no functional benefit to that. You need a certain amount, but after you've got that, you just need to maintain it. So I work much more on stabilizing the core than mobilizing the core. So now when I do my practice, I do what McGill calls his big three, which I document in the book. And there's like, we would call it a balancing cat, when you're on all fours and one arm forward, one leg back, and then switch sides. The other is just a plank on elbows. And the other would be something like a mini sit-up, but very, very low. And that's just to strengthen all the muscles, not just in the stomach, but all the way around the hoop of the torso. So I spend more time working on that to build stability than I do on working on mobility. I still do some mobility, but not as much as I used to. Now for the shoulders and the hips, yeah, they do shrink wrap, especially the hips as we get older. So I work more on mobility in the hips and more on stability in the spine than I used to before.
Thank you. I like how you defined it as simplifying rather than limiting. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, you'll find you can do just as much with a lot fewer poses. And I think the students won't get quite as lost either, because you'll come back to these like old favorites.
Great. So we have just a couple of minutes left. I'm wondering if anyone else has any more questions before we will wrap this up with a nice meditation. Samantha. And then Samantha, then Sarah.
Okay.
I'll be quick, or I guess the time of it depends on your answer. But how has the rise of things like text neck or tech neck informed how you're teaching and maybe different precautions that you would take? Like with people my age or a bit older, we haven't had it, you know, for so long. Hopefully we're mindful of posture, but most people aren't. But there's studies showing preteens and teenagers that have had mobile devices and other things since they were like little, that they're actually starting to get tissue that's going to set their bones with a jutted forward head. So how has that informed, you know, just different ways that you would teach and be mindful of those type of body changes?
Well, when I was researching your spine, your yoga, I came to this whole question of text neck, and it seems to actually be quite controversial in the science world. It's not new. You know, we've always done this. We had books, we had newspapers. So for a long time, for decades, people have been in this position. And yet in the 50s and 40s, we didn't call it text neck or book neck or newspaper neck. So this seems to be a natural position for the human head. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to cause problems. But there seems to be a thing nowadays that everyone's worried about text neck because everyone's looking down. But it turns out it's no worse than it's been in other generations. The problem really is for you, how is your posture and how does it affect you? Because definitely some people, if they get chronically here, chronically weak and long here, chronically tight and short here, that could cause a whole bunch of other problems throughout the whole body. and they definitely need to adjust their posture and sit up tall. Other people can do this, and it's fine. You know, we're meant to do this. We should be able to bring our chin toward the chest. You don't necessarily have to stay there for 8 hours a day, but this is a natural range of motion, and this is a natural range of motion. So I'd rather just try to work on mobilizing the neck, make sure you can move in all its directions, and also being able to stabilize the neck when it's under load, which isn't too often. We're not usually loading the neck so much. We load the lower back, but still you want stability and mobility in the neck. So whether you got text neck or not, I think it's a good idea to work on being able to extend the neck to be able to move in all its directions. Now, some people get diagnosed, you know, the neck is supposed to, if you're looking this way, it's supposed to have, sorry, if you're looking that way, it's supposed to have a little lordotic curve. Well, about a quarter of the people have a straight neck, and that's just human variation. But if they go to a therapist or a doctor or even a yoga teacher, they feel the neck and say, oh, you've lost your lordosis. You've got a straight neck. We got to straighten that out. And that's just them. Their bones are fine. They don't need to fix that. Some people do have, they're supposed to have a neck like this, but because the text neck is like this, and now they've got a problem. So just because you got a straight neck doesn't mean you've got a pathology. So again, you got to look at what's it like for you. Is this a problem for you or not? So again, everyone's kind of different. So rather than diagnose, oh, your head's always down, it's bad. Well, can you move your head back? Can you keep it here? Can you move it around? If you don't have that range of motion, or if you're getting headaches and other things, yeah, maybe you do have a pathology. But it may not be the text neck that's causing the problem. Maybe something else is at work there. So yeah, I haven't really answered your question, Samantha. It kind of depends. How do you feel?
No, that's okay, and that makes sense. I mean, that just goes back to what you've been saying the whole time of look at the body, look at the individual, and
Right.
if they tell you something like, I mean, I don't really teach shoulder stand, but we'll say shoulder stand gives
Right.
them problems, then like stick them in the burrito.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or use blankets under the shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks.
definitely. Some people cannot flex their neck 90 degrees. So a shoulder stand for them could be problematic. But if you put blankets under the shoulders, this now is like that, and now you don't have to be 90 degrees. Or you
Yeah.
say Viparita Karani, so now the neck is completely neutral. There's almost as much benefits in Viparita Karani as there is in a shoulder stand. So shoulder stand to me is another high risk, low reward pose. I don't teach it anymore. I don't offer it. I'm not sure we really need it. And
I'm the
that's
same.
blasphemy. It's supposed to be the queen of postures, but you know, again, that was for a different type of people. That was Krishnamacharya, who was only 5 foot tall and 110 pounds. You know, and he was teaching young boys. You know, that doesn't mean it's going to work for a 60-year-old, you know, different person.
Yeah, thanks. I say that all the time when I do quite a few beginners courses as well as regular classes. And I tell them, you know, our modern postural yoga is quite new in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
And it was mainly practiced and developed for 14-year-old boys, which I am not.
Right.
So yeah, it's good to remind people of that.
And then in the 90s, I went through a phase where it was designed for dancers. And most of the yoga teachers were ex-dancers. And most people are not dancers. They don't have the body for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it hasn't been designed for most people. It's been designed for very flexible, rare people.
Yeah. Cool.
Tara, you
Tara?
had one question?
I do, and this leads well into it. As you were talking about the history of yoga, my understanding of that history is that yoga initially was taught from teacher to student, and it was more of a one-on-one. And as we've moved into the present day, specifically here in the West, it's a lot of group classes. And my first question was about that, how to teach that large group. And so my question now is, what are your thoughts on the future of yoga? Do you see this information of the very unique individual person changing how we teach yoga? And do you see it turning back towards more the traditional student to teacher, where we can have those 20 classes for those 20 individuals? Or I'm just curious about your thoughts on that.
Well, again, it comes back to intention. Why do people come to a yoga class? I took up the asana practice to help my meditation practice, but very few students do that. Very few students will do asana to help the meditation. So a lot of people come to yoga because they're too stressed, or they're bored, or maybe they're lonely. They can do something with their friends, or they're tight, or they're very stiff. But very few people come because it's a spiritual practice, which it evolved traditionally to be. It was a spiritual practice. And in the very early 20th century, late 1900s, 19th century, it started to become a therapeutic practice. It was more the fitness cure. And that was the stage in Europe where the body natural became a very big thing. And that infiltrated into India. So people are starting to do yoga now for physical benefits, not the spiritual benefits. And as long as that's still the prime driver, I don't think it's going to go back to the spiritual part. But if it does, that's best done one-on-one. But instead, what I see happening there is it's kind of split off, and we have this whole other thing called mindfulness and meditation. And that's a huge other realm of itself. That's where your spiritual stuff is. The physical stuff is here in yoga, and the spiritual stuff is there in meditation. And there are a few classes that bring them together. It's kind of a grayscale. It's not all one or the other. But the hardcore vinyasa yogis, they're usually in it for physical benefits and maybe some other things. And along the way, they'll say, yeah, it's very meditative. But what got them there was the physical challenge. So I think we've got a ways to go before we run out of room on that one.
Thanks.
Sure.
Well, that about wraps up the hour. But before we wrap it up, I wanted to, again, thank you so much, Bernie. Thank you for just taking the time out of your busy schedule to be able to sit down with us for this hour and just share your insights and be able to answer these really great questions about how we can become more mindful teachers and really be more inclusive in our instruction so that each and every body can be able to practice their own yoga.
Well, thanks, Julie. They were great questions. I really enjoyed being here.
And for any one of you that watch the recording later and you'd like to know how to pick up Bernie's book, you could either go to his website, yinyoga.com, and he has a link in the upper right-hand corner that has the picture of Your Spine, Your Yoga, or you can go to amazon.com and search Your Spine, Your Yoga, and you'll be able to pick up a copy there. And I know that they'll have the Kindle version as well as the softcover version. So we'll definitely continue reading the book because there's so many golden nuggets in the book. I myself am still rereading the first 2 chapters because there's so many things that I pick up the next subsequent times that you read it. And so we'll continue this community dialogue and continue to ask great questions and help each other become even better students and teachers. And thank you guys for jumping in on the chat. I know that you're on the East Coast and it's nighttime. It's bedtime. So so this will be a great time to do a nice meditation to wrap the whole thing up. Even though I'm getting so excited now to read the book. So we can close our eyes. And just notice the sensations you feel right now. And as Bernie has been asking throughout our conversation, how are you feeling? How do you feel? And taking in all of the wisdom and the insights that we've gained over this past hour. Just notice and take a mental note. And knowing what we know now, we can think about our next steps as students, as teachers. And you can bring your hands to your chest and you can bow forward to your fingertips. And you can feel this sense of gratitude Gratitude for everyone that's been able to be a part of this special community. So thank you, Bernie. Thank you, everyone, for joining the chat, for watching the recording.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Have a good night.